Alright guys, welcome back to another round of the Dev-astation tournament. It's your boy Jacob Pearson, joined today in the commentary booth by my fellow developer Jason. Say hi Jason.
Hey guys, this is an exciting match. What do you think these people are going to bring this time?
Oh, too late. Looks like we have Katsu versus Rhinar here today. Karol on his favorite hero Rhinar versus Newsun on his favorite hero Katsu. So this should definitely be an interesting one for sure. What do you think of the matchup, Jason?
Well, this is actually really interesting. I think this is both players' most comfortable hero. Like, I think Newsun just really wanted this Katsu during the draft, and everyone knows that Karol just loves his Rhinar.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to seeing some dice being rolled by Karol over there. What type of strategies do you think that they're going to use or sideboard into here?
Well, I think Newsun is playing more to control Katsu. He generally doesn't like to be attacking too much with a combo, which sometimes you see with Katsu. And from the other side of Karol, he could actually go like either way. Like he could play the more like conservative route or maybe aggressive. What do you think is going to happen from the Rhinar side?
Well, the best way to beat control decks I've found playing a Rhinar is trying to go for those really, really big combo turns based around Blood Rush Bellow and just trying to maximize the damage output. I see Karol's also playing energy potions in his list as well, so it kind of lends itself to that strategy as well, where you try and set up this big board, you get all those resources ready there, you roll big on the scab skins, and then Blood Rush Bellow your way to victory.
So what do you think the chances are that's a Ramen Club or two Mandible Claws stacked together?
I think Karol's going to be cheeky here. I can't see him not playing the two Mandible Claws. Oh, there it is! Cheeky Karol with the two Mandible Claws and the one stack. A little tournament trick for you guys if you just want to get some extra bait value out of your opponent.
Yeah, and Karol runs both Ramen Club and Claws, but like you said earlier, Claws is a lot better against the control deck of Katsu. What do you think we're looking out here from Karol's side? What are the key cards?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I think the Blood Rush Bellow. Also, barraging Beatdown is very important for this matchup. You can basically always guarantee that Newson's going to have a defense reaction hanging around in his arsenal. So when you're going in for those big turns, stripping his whole hand is a very important task. Just to make sure you can maximize damage. Also, Newsun can't really make very good use of 4-card hands, playing a more control style Katsu, because he's often going to be left with multiple defense reactions or multiple blues in his hand that he's not going to be able to attack with.
Yeah, right off the bat, we see Newsun just pitching in Lightning Strike, conserving his power cards, and going for Kodachis hits. Since this is turn 1, there's no point utilizing all his cards. From Newsun's side, we're going to be looking out to try to put defense reactions in Arsenal. We'll see later on if this one is a defense reaction.
Yeah, I think it is. Based on the fact that he just pitched in Lightning Strike there, it leads me to believe that. Because sometimes what you want to do as the Katsu control deck in this matchup is just try and get Rhinar on a low life total early to try and force him to go for those big plays as early as possible with the least amount of combo pieces. So I'm pretty sure that is because Lightning Strike in Arsenal lets you have very flexible turns. So even if you draw a hand that's all defense reactions and blues, etc., you can easily come back with a strong turn. Whereas the defense reaction is just there in case Karol gets the nut on turn 1, I feel. And Newsun just wants to play as safe as possible. And so I kind of feel that that's a defense reaction sitting there.
Alright, well we better hope it is, because Karol rolled a 5 on his scab skin, getting 2 action points. And Karol's going for a strong Savage Feast play here. Like, this is going to end up intimidating a few cards. So Newsun really wants to flip flank his arsenal right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Savage Feast being very, very, very strong with multiple action points because it replaces itself with its draw effect. It gets the Intimidate with Rhinar and represents 6 damage on board, all for the price of 1 resource point. Very powerful card with those additional action points from Scabskins.
Yeah, so we see now that there was an Intimidate card, like you say, and Karol can just really just continue his turn after this. But there is the Flick Flack.
Oh, Newson's not sure. Oh, yeah, he sends the blue Flick Flack. He says, all right, I'm going to take it. Now, interesting thing here. Karol might just, he's just going to go for the claw here. He doesn't want Newsun to be able to get the value out of this Flick Flack. He might be holding back a big attack in his hand, just representing a nice little 3 just in case.
Yeah, like after a Flick Flack, you normally see a combo card that will be defending for 5. But like you said, Mandible Claw, do you really want to defend 5 on 3? And Newsun does.
There we see, he was holding back a Smash Instinct. So if Newsun didn't Flick Flack there, it's possible that Karol could have gone for the Smash Instinct line instead.
Not only this, by pitching to your weapon, you're not actually using up your card. So the later on, this matchup, I would not be surprised if it goes a little bit to fatigue.
Yeah, absolutely. And once Karol has gone through all the combo pieces in his deck, he has to try and find ways to win and get through little points of burst through Katsu's pile of defense reactions. So I definitely see a board state where Karol could possibly be fatigued by the strategy.
And this is going to be quite an interesting game. So normally in Flesh of Blood, you're going to see a lot of people just pitch their blues and not worry about it. But when we see high-level plays like this, we see both Newsun and Karol opting to pitch high-quality cards like Line and Strike and just high-quality 6-power Brute cards on Karol's side, because they both know this game's going long, as we see Newsun plays the Sigil of Solace. Both decks are designed to have some form of late game.
Yeah, Newsun's especially, he's really wanting to play to that strategy. He's kind of going to force Karol to be the aggressor, I feel, in this matchup.
Yeah, and Karol, although the Brute is not the best in terms of...
Oh, 2 action points. Nice roll again for Karol.
Yeah. Karol's not going to play the same form of late game as Newsun, but what Karol's form of late game will actually be setting up combo turns during the hopefully mid to late game, and he can achieve this by pitching or achieve this by arsenaling. So we see another Savage Feast here.
Yep, with another extra action point. Oh, that's some good value. Karol, nice to see him getting his ones out of the way there, just for the random choice of discard. Random choice of Intimidate there after the Savage Feast. Saving his good rolls for the Scabskins,
Yeah, so what's going to be really important is, I don't believe any of these two players are running Remembrance, so it's going to be really important to see from Newsun's side how many Flip Flats get used early, and from Karol's side, what are the very key and big cards that he's going to use up. He's used up 2 red Savage Feasts, although not the biggest powerhouse, still a very powerful card.
Yeah. It's very important, I think, for Karol to have those Savage Feasts with the extra action points, just to maximize the damage and also the disadvantage. The Intimidate from Rhinar is a little bit underrated, I feel, by a lot of players. The fact that you no longer have full choice in what cards you block with, even one Intimidate can ruin your turn, leaving you with too many resource cards or too many power cards in your hand left over. It can often leave your turns feeling quite lackluster.
So here's something really important. Like Karol, 2 turns in a row just attacked with 2 Mandible Claws. The claws are not just there for your Blood Rush Bella turn. It's going to be really important that Karol tries to get these defense reactions out of Newsun's hand and out of his deck, while minimizing the amount of cards he actually uses. And those claws are fantastic for this purpose. We're having a little bit of a battle of the Guardian weapons.
Yeah, absolutely. Something interesting to note there as well, Karol chose not to Arsenal on his last turn. We see he held what appears to be a blue Savage Feast, I believe, in his hand, rather than Arsenal. Well, what do you think the decision tree behind that is?
Well, you don't entirely want it to be stuck in your arsenal. You are reliant on rolling a 4 or higher, and it pays off.
Yeah, you want to preserve those cards as much as possible, and Karol not really wanting to waste the card, quote unquote, on playing Blue Savage Feast from Arsenal. It could easily be sat there for multiple turns as he's trying to roll for Scabskins to get that extra action point.
Not that Karol was playing around Command and Conquer, but it's pretty funny how this worked out. Newsun playing this Command and Conquer while Karol has no arsenal. Karol still wants to preserve his life total, so it's still going to be a double defense here.
Yeah, but it's interesting that it almost gives him the option of if he drew into a strong turn there, he has to not worry about losing that extra card to Command and Conquer.
Yeah, definitely. And that Savage Beast using for either pitching or defending is the best use of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, so we see Karol just making a conservative play here, just pitching, using the Tunic, coming in with a single claw. He really wants that card in his hand in Arsenal. I believe it was a Barraging Beatdown, so that's one of the key cards that we were talking about at the start that could be the key to Karol forcing through large amounts of damage.
And Barraging Beatdown, a lot better in multiple. You don't really want to be intimidating your opponent down to 1 card while your opponent has a uncarded Arsenal, especially in Newson's deck where there's so many defense reactions.
Yeah, I believe Newson's playing 3 Sink Below Red, 3 Red Fate for Scenes, 9 Flick Flacks, and some unmovables, although I don't think he'll be playing that in this particular matchup. That's a lot of defense reactions for Karol to work his way through.
And we see Newsun here pitching 2 red Soul Bead strikes, still just maintaining the pitching of red cards. We might see later on that these red cards just actually come back and maybe like craft a good hand.
Absolutely, just to keep the pressure on throughout the game. That's what Katsu's really trying to do here, is just constantly pressure Karol's life total, just try and get him to block with as many cards as possible so that he's too low for when he wants to go for his big combo turns.
Right now we just see both players really preserving their life. Both players roughly about the same life, and no one's doing much yet, but we just need to wait for the really big turn, and if you miss it, if these big turns will come like really fast. As soon as Karol either rolls a 6 or maybe like does like a big Blood Rush Bellows turn, the game could be over in any minute.
Yeah. Well, we see that Karol opted not to block the Pounding Gale for 5. There's the... Oh, no, that wasn't for Scabskins. My bad. Got a little bit too excited there. This is just an Intimidate for the Awakening Bellow. Awakening Bellow just says... it's a blue one, I believe. And it just says Intimidate. Your next Brute Attack action card gets +1. He's following that up with a Blood Rush Bellow, the first one of the game. Yoinks another card out of Newson's hand. He's got 2 cards left here. We know that Karol's got a Barraging Beatdown in Arsenal as well for a 3rd card. Hopefully another Brute Attack that discards for the 4th card. It's looking like a lot of damage coming Newson's way this turn.
This could be a really big turn, and yes, there's Barraging Beatdown in Karol's Arsenal, but what I'm really hoping to see him do here is just attack with a Claw. The Claw has Go Again, and you don't necessarily have to play with your Barraging Beatdown straight away. If you attack with the Claw first and say, we do see the Barraging Beatdown, but if Karol attacked with the Claw first and Newsun defended with just 1 card, then Karol could play the Barraging Beatdown for his 2nd Claw, but we don't see that here.
Yeah, it's kind of signifying to me that he's got another big Brute Attack that's coming here. Yep, we see the pack can't come through, so he's just opting to strip the card. So this is coming in for 13 damage, I believe.
I think Karol actually was really unfortunate to draw 2 red cards, Alpha Rampage and Pack card. This is a really strong turn, and we actually see him push through a lot of damage. But what Karol was really hoping for there is to draw at least one blue pitch and really utilizing a Claw. Using a Blood Rush Bellow and not attacking with the Claws is not what you want to do in this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. He loses a lot of free damage there, using up those premium red cards as well.
And although Newsun takes a chunk of damage, I would not be too upset if I was in Newsun's position. Like surviving that turn and just getting a 4-card hand to re-pressure Karol. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this whole turn we'll be like at very close life again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we see Newsun just going Kodachis, Mugenshi release, threatening the Snapdragon Scalers. We see he's got another red attack in his hand. So if Karol doesn't opt to block this, he could be looking at a Mask Trigger from Newsun's side.
I mean, this is probably the ideal turn for Newsun to be pushing damage. It's not very often Newsun will have 4 cards in hand. Newsun, of course, having the 4 cards in hand due to being intimidated. And look at that.
We see the Snapdragon Scalers come out. He's going to get the Mask Trigger. He's going to draw a card. He's going to get the Katsu Trigger to go search up probably a red Pounding Gale, I'd imagine, by discarding one of those 0 drops in his hand.
Newsun does already have a Flusterfist. It depends if Newsun actually values the fact that he knows somewhat the order off the bottom of his deck, or does he just really want to be pushing for that 1 extra damage? And we see here he does actually want to discard a card for essentially 1 extra damage.
Yeah, it's interesting to note because when we saw Newsun pitch, he pitched his E-Strike and his Mugenshi together, 2 red Soul Beads together. So maybe he just wants to spread those threats throughout his deck rather than having them clumped up like that.
Yeah, definitely. Although Katsu's ability it's not free, you are essentially losing a card. And in this matchup, what do you think? Do you think it's going to come down to that 1 card you discarded to Katsu?
Looking at what's already been played, I don't think that's what it's going to come down to, just because Karol has already blown through one of his Blood Rush Bellows. Newsun knows that the threat density in Karol's deck's already gone down by effectively a third for what this matchup generally comes down to. So he's just probably wanting to apply as much pressure as possible because it looks like Karol's not planning to go super late on this one.
And look at that, like, although Karol had a really big turn, Newson's just got his life back. Karol does have, I believe, a 3-card hand, but yeah, that's the power of Katsu, and also intimidating the cards in hand. They don't go away forever. The opponent still gets them back to defend with, to attack with.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we definitely saw the power of Snapdragon Scalers on that last turn. The amount of extra damage that Newsun got off of it. He drew a card, he pushed through another 5 damage, all just for the one common equipment. Just really shows the power level of some of these commons from the early sets.
And now Newsun's back to doing Harmonized Kodachis in either Sigil of Solacene or using another Kodachi hit. And this is really cool. We know that Newsun has Sigil of Solace in his hand, but Karol doesn't know if he needs to defend this Kodachi hit and because of the mask, but we know that Newsun has, I believe it's a Fateful Scene and Sigil of Solace, and you're going to see the game just slow down again here. We're going to have these like really big turns, and then it's just going to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, it's very risky taking that Kodachi hit there. Karol knows that Newsun still has 2 red Soulbeat sites that are shuffled back into his deck, so he could have easily finished the chain with that, threatening 4 damage with the mask trigger, which just makes it exponentially harder to block as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when Karol lets you use his equipment to get like a nice window of defending. You almost want to defend with one of your Battle Worn 2s kind of early, so then you have this perfect defensive one for you defend the second Kodachi and then you take a bit of damage, but you're kind of free from the mask for a turn.
Yeah, the pressure of mask of momentum is a real thing that players need to be aware of when they're playing against the ninja heroes. That free source of card advantage with the Harmonized Kodachi followed by a attack is a very, very powerful effect.
Having said that, if I was in Karol's shoes, I'll be like delighted to see the fact that Newsun used the Snapdragon Scalers at such a high life total. Like, that's gonna really free up being able to let the mask trigger. Without the Scalers, you're gonna have to respect the mask every turn, but now, essentially, if the third attack does not have go again, Karol could just let it hit and the mask trigger is not that relevant.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you look at E-Strike for an example, if E-Strike comes in after 2 Kodachis, if you can do it for 7, that's a lot of threat. Even if Karol puts 2 cards in front of it with Snapdragon Scalers, he can threaten to get the mask trigger, draw a card, and continue on after the E-Strike.
Karol took some damage. I guess his opponent had a Sigil turn, but like Karol's 4-card hand is quite disappointing actually.
Yeah, just only getting 2 Intimidates and coming in for 7. So yeah, we're just going to see Newsun block with 1 blue Flying Center and a Fateful Scene to prevent all of the damage.
Yeah, you don't really want to be using 4 cards and 2 of them being discarded just for your opponent to use 2 cards back. And now Newsun essentially just getting free Kodachi damage.
Yeah, like if we look at that turn cycle, that might be the turning point in this game where Newsun's just able to carry this momentum because we see he's managed to recover from one of Karol's big turns earlier. He's used one of his Blood Rush turns. He's ahead. He's got tempo. He's pushing even more damage this turn. It's not looking too good for Karol here. Karol really needs some strong turns. Cool. Is that a blue Flusterfist to end the chain?
I think that's red. He pitched a blue and then a red. But here's the thing. Here's what we talked about earlier. Newsun does not have a Snapdragon Scaler, so this is not as threatening.
We've also seen Newsun play a lot of sigils already, which means that the amount of relevant things he can draw off the top of his deck is very, very little. The only thing that Karol's probably worried about is if he doesn't already have a defense reaction as the last card in his hand, being able to draw a defense reaction off the top can be pretty brutal if Karol's planning a big turn.
Do you think Karol's also thinking about Red Razor Reflex here?
Yeah, possibly. Red Razor Reflex. I believe, has Newsun played any of this game? I don't think he has.
He hasn't played any of this game, but a way to kind of like figure out how likely Newsun is to have Razor Reflex is also just think back to how Newsun defended last turn. If you actually think of how Newsun defended last turn, he defended with 1 card and then defended with Fateful Scene. He still very aggressively defended. But I actually think it's quite likely from Karol's perspective that that he thinks Newson's last card could be another defense reaction. Newsun wouldn't use up his Fateful Scene so liberally if he did not have another defense reaction. Let's say Newson's last card in hand was just a random like pounding nail or something. He would have probably tried to defend with either defend with 2 cards that defend for free because he only got intimidated twice. He might not have the choice, but it makes a lot of sense to me that Newsun would not leave his arsenal without a defense reaction at this point of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. He really does not want to be blown out by a big chain of barraging beatdowns or a bellow turn here. Because that could easily spell devastation. I've seen some of those bellow turns do upwards of 20 damage.
Yeah, definitely. And if you guys want to be up in your game, it's going to be really important, especially if you're from Karol's side, to actually think how would Newsun play if his hand had Razor Reflex, and how would Newsun play if his hand had a defense reaction. The way that Newsun played a few his last turns, especially defending with Fateful Scene, despite having a lot of high quality defend for freeze that he wouldn't mind defending with, it just makes sense to me that Newsun just put another defense reaction. And if Karol knows this, he should make his plays accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing an E-Strike just come in for 7, I believe. Yep, just firing it off. Newsun left with 1 card in hand. Do you think that means that his last card's a sigil there in Arsenal?
Well, there is only one more sigil of Solids, so I would not be surprised if he has a sigil. Newson's also capable of just like having his last turn be a sigil Solids put into the arsenal and use it to kind of bluff a defense reaction.
Yeah, it's definitely not a Razor here. If it was a Razor, I feel like Newsun would have just gone for some Kodachis followed by the E-Strike with 1 resource floating. If it was a Razor and he had it sitting in his arsenal.
It also just can't be a Razor because the previous turn when Newsun attacked with 2 Kodachis into Flusterfist, he had 1 resource left and that was the perfect Razor turn. And Karol should know this. Karol should know that this Atlanta Strike cannot carry a Razor Reflex on this given turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Alright, we see Karol defending. Oh, 2 barraging beatdowns. Ugh. It must not feel... Yep, there's the sigil from Arsenal from Newsun.
That must not feel good.
No. That's some of your really high threat combo cards. What do you think's in Karol's hand to block with those barraging beatdowns? That's brutal.
I mean, he might have like something that can't block, like defend, like something like an energy potion. Oh, he has a 3rd barraging beatdown here as well.
Oh.
It's unfortunate because Newsun's just on like a little bit too high of a life total, and there's an energy potion.
Alright, we see the energy potion come up with the claw. So is that a Blood Rush Bellow that's left in Karol's hand?
It should just be Blood Rush Bellow. So if Karol had a barraging beatdown in his arsenal and he defended with 2 barraging beatdowns and has energy potion as his last card, it just makes sense to me that Karol doesn't have an attack. And this is the time that he would most likely defend with his barraging beatdowns there. So if I was in Newsun's shoes, I would like put money on it. That is a Blood Rush Bellow in Karol's arsenal.
Yeah, for sure. He just seems so like... Oh, we see him having a Beast Within in hand. Looks like Karol's got the makings of a strong turn if he can get that card discarded to his Blood Rush Bellow.
This is probably a really, really pivotal point in this match. Like, whether or not Karol can do a really better turn here is going to really decide it. What I really want to see is Karol look at using that Arcanite Skull Gap around now. Maybe not literally on this, but I really wanted to see him use up one of his battle wards and really just like take some damage. I don't really like to defend with Arcanite Skullcap here because Arcanite Skullcap was with no counters beforehand. And with the Scalers gone, you don't have to defend with the Kodachi. I would have really liked to see earlier in this game, Karol just used up his Arcanite Skullcap once, and then on this pivotal turn, use the Skullcap defending for 1 on the second Kodachi.
Yep, absolutely. 100% agree with you there, Jason. But it's an interesting point, just how much of a difference the Katsu player having Snapdragon Scalers in play makes to a lot of the gameplay decisions.
Yeah, definitely. If he had Snapdragon Scalers, I think we have to respect the second Kodachi a lot more, and we should... And this is also different if you're playing against Katsu Control or Katsu Aggro. Katsu Aggro can play Leg Tap in its 3rd chain, so you really do want to consider defending the second Kodachi despite them not having Scalers. But in this instance, I actually quite dislike the defense from Karol.
Yeah. Yep, we see that we were right about Karol's arsenal being Blood Rush Bellow. Firing off, discarded his Beast Within, which caught a Massacre. So he's back up to 4 cards now. Oh, is that another Bellow that Karol drew? Wow.
He also seems to have another beast with him, so this has to be the big turn for Karol. Karol's already dropped down so much life. What did Karol defend with on his last turn?
I think it was a red or blue Recurromp, I think, that he defended with last turn. Maybe he just wanted to maximize the chance of discarding this beast with him.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like he wanted to maximize the chance of like discarding beast with him, but I don't know if I like just defending with a card here on right before your big turn. Karol, the way that Karol wins this game, he's going to have to do double claws into something big. I would not hate it if Karol wanted to slow roll the Blood Rush Bellows to be on different turns, but we see here he's just going for it. And maybe he just needs to do this. He needs to try to hit the beast with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, the Massacre goes down. That's the big threat that was in Karol's hand. I believe he's left with the Beast Within and another mystery card. It's the last 2 cards in his hand.
That's not what you want to see, but let's hopefully Karol can just draw a bit of blue pitch. He really wants to go attack or claws into something else. I would have kind of liked to see Karol had like saved a Bellow and just go Bellow to Bellow turns. What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept. Maybe Karol's just worried about his life total being so low now that he feels like if he takes another turn of pressure from Newsun, he's not going to have the chance to fight back with a Blood Rush Bellow. Interesting to know. Do you think he's going to try and roll Scabskins here to try and play a Intimidate attack before his claws?
It would be pretty ideal to do so, especially when you have Gambler's Glove. You can't really be like so risk averse that you like don't make that play. In addition, I think there's a way for him to play his Alpha Rampage enforcing the discard on Beast Within. So it might be nice if you can just roll 2 action points here. When you're playing Rhinar, you need to try to establish like how behind you are, and the more behind you are, the more you want to be taking risks. And with Gambler's Glove still in play, I would be really liking to just like see a really big gamble, big play from Karol.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if Karol just went roll the Scabskins, let's say he got his 2 action points. He pitches his Riled Up and his red Pulping, plays the Alpha Rampage, discarding the Beast Within. He intimidates the last 2 cards from Newson's hand. He is attacking for 13 that Newsun can only block with a defense reaction from Arsenal. And he still gets to follow up with 2 claws possibly if he draws a blue.
At minimum 1 claw. If you're going to draw a red, 1 claw. But that would be 20 damage, which would be pretty good. But having said that, Karol elected to go forward the safer route and just going for the claws. And now he's deciding what to be doing next. He seems to be pitching the Beast Within for another claw. And I think this is going to end with a Pulping.
Yeah, so Pulping, remove the Tunic counter, play the Pulping. So Newson's probably thinking that Karol's got a Barraging Beatdown in hand. Just from the way that he's not wanting to block here. He's wanting to save the 1 card in hand at least after the Barraging and the Arsenal in order to prevent the extra damage, I feel. But now he's attacking with the 2nd claw. That's not so much of a concern, I think.
It really does go both ways. Because when you're playing around Barraging, you're actually walking more into just a random Intimidator card.
Yeah, and we see Newsun blocking all the damage here. He's got a Nourishing Emptiness, a Flick Flag, and a Breaking Scales. Probably a combo card there left in his hand to hopefully block this Pulping. Let's see if this Pulping intimidates. Oh, it's a 6 power. He yoinks the last card out of Newsun's hand and gets another 10 damage through. Not bad.
Is that this is yellow or blue Recurromp?
I believe it's a yellow Recurromp, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say if that was a blue Recurromp, the other player would have just ended up a lot better. But this is still a really good turn for Karol.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a lot of damage. Although Karol's pretty much out of gas at this point, he's got to really find a creative way to get Newsun to that 4 life or less threshold. Newsun's used all the sigils, I believe, which means that if Karol can get him to the point where 1, 2, maybe even 3 Reckless Swings can take him out, then I think he'll be in the driver's seat. But this is not going to drop Newsun into that life point range.
Yeah, this is actually this is a very interesting point in the game. Like, on the one hand, Karol got some massive turns, but now Karol needs to really think, like, how is he going to push through the last points of damage? If I was actually in Newsun's shoes, I'm actually quite happy with this exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting the last 2 big power cards out of Karol's deck, being those Blood Rush Bellows. Newsun knows Karol's list. We know he doesn't have Remembrance. He doesn't have another way of getting those back. So Karol's really got to find some creative way. We know he's blocked with a bunch of Barraging Beatdowns. He's played a bunch of Barraging Beatdowns. Those ways of intimidating cards out of Newsun's hand are gone. He's he's really got to find some creative ways or some big rolls on Scabskin with multiple big Intimidate attacks, I think, if he wants to close out this game.
Yeah, speaking of Remembrance, I'm surprised that Karol didn't choose to put some Remembrance into his deck. That is the nature of this format, and you know you're not going to play against like a lot of the same control decks. I think Karol opted to be playing with the Arc Smash, even though we ended up with Dash being the first eliminator of the tournament. If you guys are playing this Rhinar deck in your local classic, I would actually advise you guys to just play a Remembrance or two, and it's going to help with this type of matchup a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something to note as well with a lot of our lists. A lot of our lists are taken into account with what matchups we want to play against with what decks. So there's lots of little changes that have been made to these decks to try and optimize them in this very specialized metagame.
We're entering the last phase of the game.
And an E-Strike from Newsun. God, Karol, that's gotta hurt. Karol must have been wanting to keep his whole hand here to throw back the pressure.
Yeah.
But this is a big E-Strike from Newsun. Having a big pressure card instead of an attack for 2 at the end of this combat chain makes all the difference in the world. If Newsun only had the blue Fine Center to follow this combat chain, I think Karol would happily take it. Not worry about it and just go on smiling for his big turn, but this has got to be forcing some kind of a block from Karol here. Karol can't drop that low. If Karol drops to 2, that means that any Kodachi attack is threatening lethal with the Razor Reflexes that are still left in Newsun's deck.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really surprised at Karol's use of his equipment. He's been conserving his equipment for quite some time, and he actually defends with the Tunic here instead of Scabskin. And this comes down to earlier. I would have really liked if Karol just aggressively used his first instance of either Skullcap or Scabskin on a defend for 2, because defending for 1 is actually a premium point against Katsu.
Yeah, there's a lot of breakpoints for Katsu, and you really want to stop that. Also, I think that's his last barraging beatdown and one of his second to last Alpha Rampages that Karol blocked with. He's got to have almost no power cards left in this deck. It's not looking good. One of the turns that I think Karol might want to have set up there is block with the other 2 cards in his hand, Arsenal the Alpha Rampage or the barraging beatdown, and then just really hope to be able to set it up for next turn. Obviously, that wouldn't have happened here. Newsun following the turn with a command, but definitely an interesting line that you could consider.
If you're in Karol in his shoes right now, how are you painting a picture to win this game? Because your power cards are gone, your tune is gone, but what's done is done. You need to still find a path to win, and despite that, what would you want to do? What would you want to do at this point if you're Karol?
I know he has 1 Alpha Rampage pitched with the Beast Within that's got on circulation in his deck. He's got 2 Energy Potions still circulating in his deck. I'd want to be blocking hard, preventing all the damage, and just trying to get those Energy Potions in play before I see that Alpha turn. And then on that Alpha turn, use the last of your equipment in order to burst him down. Oh, we see the one there from Karol. Gambler's Gloves being used. Oof, 2 down to 1 action point.
That is really unfortunate. But I like this. I like Karol just establishing he's a little bit behind in this game. I'm gonna roll very aggressively with Scabskin. You need to sometimes just roll maybe even multiple 6s or 4s and 5s for you to get back in the game. Yeah. But some chance of winning is a lot better than just not rolling at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very powerful that Rhinar has this inbuilt catch-up mechanic in Scabskin Leathers. Just extra action points are a very, very useful way to push through damage at the end of the game. And hey, sometimes you just gotta roll and hope for the best.
And looks like Karol's done exactly what you said before and just going for the energy potion. He's probably setting up for the last turn of Alpha Rampage and Beast Within. And I think this is what's going through Karol's head right now. He knows a lot of his power cards are down, and he's now trying to shape a way to win this game. Even though it doesn't look good for Karol, he can still pull something together with the last few cards that he has.
Yeah, absolutely. Alpha Rampage with a Beast Within trigger. It's going to intimidate 2 cards out of Newson's hand. Hopefully he's able to follow it up with another big attack after that, possibly with some claws thanks to the energy potions. And that might be able to close out the life gap to the point where Newsun goes to 1 or 2 and is in that savage swing range.
It looks like, from Newson's perspective, Newsun should know also that Karol pitched his last Alpha Rampage. Newsun wants to end this game as soon as possible. Not that this Katsu list has the luxury of pushing through damage, but if I was in Newsun's shoes, I would just be trying to push heavy damage as long as you don't drop to reckless win range.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Newson's more than happy to take and trade damage at this point, so long as, like you said, and we talked about before, he doesn't fall into that range where he's able to die to the Savage Swings rolling around in Karol's list.
And looking at Karol's hand here, he has a reckless swing with only 1/6 power cards, and I don't like this.
Oh no, I don't think Karol realizes just what he's doing. If he discards a 6 power here, that Skull Cap is blocking for 0 because his life total is going to fall below Karol's. If Newson's on 6, oh, thank God. Thank God it didn't deal 2 damage, one of the few times.
Yeah, and I wonder if Karol knew about this play or whether or not he just had to take the risk and hope he didn't discard a 6 power. But for you viewers at home, if you defend with Skull Cap, even if it's defending for 1, but before damage actually happens, you manipulate life totals. In this case, Reckless Swing would have put Newsun from 8 to 6 and put Karol ahead on life, meaning the Skull Cap is turned off, meaning that Torrent of Tempo is now going to do 1 damage, meaning Mask of Momentum.
Yeah, and the on-hit go again, meaning Karol's going to take even more damage from the follow-through. Very, very risky play from Karol there.
Well, having said that, I don't think it's necessarily like we can't just assume that Karol missed that. Karol might actually have just had to do that based on his hand.
Yeah, for sure. Like a lot of the plays that players can end up making, like may look bad on paper, but sometimes we see another reckless swing. Yeah, it does look like Karol might have been just forced into that line there. But yeah, definitely, like, especially one of the earlier games in this tournament where I was playing Dash against you, Jason, I ran into that where you made a lot of rune chance on turn 1, and I was just forced into playing a worse strategic game plan and just throwing away all my threats on boost and just trying to put as much pressure as possible. So there's definitely lines that players will end up taking that seem very suboptimal on paper, but they're just kind of forced into due to the situation.
Yeah, and it looks like Karol's in this unfortunate situation of drawing both his reckless swings at the same time. Having said that, I think it was a little bit to do with pitching. But now Karol kind of knows, alright, my game plan is not exactly to do reckless swing you to death. I need to get to the Alpha Rampage.
Yeah, the Alpha Rampage has to be the kill turn for Karol here. That looks like his one out to close out this game. He really has to preserve his life total to the point where he's able to take the Kodachi hits, hopefully block the last threat with Sabskin, and then push through for that alpha turn. He really needs all the cards in his hand for that final turn.
And if I was Karol in this shoes, I would actually now just be thinking, how am I going to be using the Sabskin? Like, how many red Torrent of Tempos or 5 power cards does Newsun have left? Sabskin, in conjunction with Defend for free, can defend something well. Like, if I was in Karol's shoes, every point of life is super important to him, and this might be a turn I'm going to be defending with a Scab Spin.
Yeah.
Now, and I'll roll with Scab Spin, and Karol needs a big turn here with 4 cards and a card in Arsenal.
Yep. I feel like Karol needs to block 2 with Scabskins here, roll the dice. He's going to take 1 from the Breaking Scales, that's fine, and roll the dice. And just fingers crossed you get 2 or more action points so you're able to have a big turn. We see there's one of the last barraging beatdowns in Karol's hand. Can't quite make out the rest of it.
When you only have 1 barraging beatdown, what you want to do with this barraging beatdown is not use it first. You want to do some attacks first. Obviously, you'll need additional action points, and here's a big roll.
All right, come on, we want to see a big roll here. Ooh.
That is not what you want to see with 4 cards in your hand. So I actually really like Karol's play last turn for serving 4 cards in his hand and defending with Scabskin. I think Karol gave his best shot to be winning this game, and Karol actually he put himself in a pretty bad situation at the start. But I'm really liking what he's doing now. He's giving himself a chance to get back into this game.
Yep.
I think he should have rolled a higher than 2, but other than that, Karol's giving him his best shot.
Yeah, absolutely. He's giving himself his best shot at winning this game. Newsun must be smiling all the way to the bank, seeing him roll a 2 on that dice roller. That's pretty sad there for our old friend Karol and Brute.
Yeah, you do not want to be in front of Newsun rolling a dice. That guy just has an aura. You rolled the least amount
Yeah, I mean,
Using-
you saw his, if you're watching his previous game where he was playing was he playing Katsu versus your Leviah deck?
I think he was playing the Rampage versus Leviah.
Yeah, so during that game, we saw a lot of ones come over from the Leviah player. The Newson's aura is just too strong.
Alright, so looks like Karol's was not ready for this one action point, and I wouldn't be surprised if this turn's not very good. I wonder if I think Karol might have a pulpit in his hand that is as his way to get the action point, but that is never going to go again in this situation.
Yeah, especially because Newson's already played out all his sigils. He probably has a defense reaction arsenal. Even if he goes barraging, beatdown, pulping, that's only stripping 2 cards. It's very, very likely that Newson's able to block with 2 cards.
Yeah, so at this point, if I was in Karol's shoes, you're just gonna have to play in a way where you can strip as many cards from Newsun town on this turn, but you want to defend with Scabskin on his next second Kodachi hit. You probably have to lose 1 or 2 cards, and then you have to roll a 4, 5, or 6 next turn. That's your game plan. So how am I going? If I roll a 4, 5, or 6 on next turn, what am I going to do? And I like this from Karol's side. Command and Conquer. Newsun, give me 2 cards. It's not a defense reaction. Now I'm going to hope from Newson's point of view that he does not have a good hand. We know that I think there's a red torrent of tempo from Newson's side, and Newsun could even just like lose his arsenal. It is fine. So we know this isn't going to work. But from Karol's side, he's setting up to then roll a really big number on his turn and hopefully win the game. Hopefully keep all 4 cards.
Yeah, he really just wanted to be leaving Newsun with only defense reactions, but we know this Sink Below is just going to be followed by using the Tunic counter and coming in with a torrent of tempo.
Actually, Newsun pitched a red symbol. I want to be defending here with 11, possibly. But it looks like, yeah, Newson's played that torrent of tempo like we said before, and now Karol has to lose at least a card. But if I was in Karol's shoe, he should know full well that Newsun does not have an attack action in his arsenal. So this is the turn Karol probably defends with just 1 card and goes down to either 2 or 1 depending if he wants to defend with the letters.
Yeah, 100%. And then just, like we said before, just trust in the Scabskins.
And there's a lot of merits here to be defending with the Scabskin. So you might be thinking, I'm going to defend this for free and don't worry about the Scabskin, I can defend it next turn. But we know that Newsun has Razor Reflex in his deck and Karol has Reckless Swing in his deck. So what I want to see from Karol here is to defend with the Scabskin, go down to 2. The next turn when Newsun attacks with Kodachi, if Newsun then Razor Reflexes it, Karol will be able to Reckless Win and still remain at 2. But if Karol did not defend with his letter, on his next turn on the first Kodachi hit, he has to defend with the letter. If Razor Reflex Reckless Win then happens, Karol just lost a life.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, come on. Come on, Karol. We want to see a big number from that Scabskins, buddy. Oh,
That
no!
is not what you want to see. These last 2 turns have not been kind to Karol, and Karol really did put himself in a really good shot to like win the game, but this is Newson's match. Like,
yeah, like we were talking about before, the aura of Newsun, man, just brutes cannot roll favorable rolls in the face of this man.
and at this point, I don't think Karol can win. He's going to be forced to be defending with that Scabskin letter here. If I wonder if Newsun has a reflex or if he even put reflexes in this matchup.
Yeah, I don't believe we've seen any reflex from Newsun. Although we've seen him sink and fade a bunch, he could have easily put them at the bottom of his deck during those critical junctures.
You probably want at least 1 in this matchup to keep your opponent honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because if they've looked through your graveyard and they've memorized your pitch, they know that you haven't played any. They might just not play around it at all, and they might just get it randomly blown out by the 1 copy late.
Alright, this does not look good for Karol here, and Newsun just only a Soulbead blue, but it's going to be hard for Karol to get back into this game.
Yeah, even with the 2-card hands, there's not a lot of pressure you can do. He doesn't have his alpha. He doesn't realistically have a way to force through the rest of Newson's life total.
Newsun still has a mask and a tutor.
Yeah, he's effectively on 11 life here. Karol, even with a massive turn, off of 2 cards, even like the most optimal 2-card hand is not going to be able to configure a way to push through that much life.
Yeah, and I think it came down to a few moments, but like we said earlier, just the uses of power cards, just not even Blood Rush Bella here, and it looks like what Karol did was just elect to keep as many barrage and beatdowns as possible. But these cards don't really play well unless you're in like massive multiples, and I think at this point Karol's just going, hey, I know your last card in your arsenal is a defense reaction by the way you play. I don't really have another way to play. Let's just hope you're bluffing for the last like 12 turns.
Yeah, I'm 99.99% sure though that Newson's holding a defense reaction in his arsenal and that this play's not going to go through. We see it go there.
I guess from Karol's perspective, did Newsun use all the sigils or still have one sigil?
No, he's used all the sigils.
Yeah, if he still had a sigil, then Newsun would have just had a sigil in his hand, and that is the dangerous part of sigils. I don't actually like sigil against specifically Rhinar. But yeah, now this is all she wrote. I think now Karol's used up his last alpha Rampage to discard or pulpin. Karol had got to the point where he saw the alpha Rampage. It's really unfortunate the last 2 turns he just like rolled very low. And there was not much that Karol could have done at that point.
Honestly, I'm very proud of Karol. He managed to get a hand with a chance at lethal after all those bad rolls and stuff. That pulping had a percentage chance of winning the game if Newsun didn't have the defense reaction in Arsenal. That was presenting a way to get Newsun down at 2 and put him within the range of a swing.
And here we see the Razor Reflex.
Oh, here's the Razor Reflex. Yep, Newsun's going Kodachi. Yep, Mugenshi. And we're going to see Karol block. Oh, he doesn't even need the Razor. Karol's last energy potion puts him in the coffin, back into the ground. And that's it. This round is over. Newsun taking it out on Katsu Control versus Rhinar.
What a game. Like we said at the start, these were both of the heroes these two were the most comfortable with. And with that, Rhinar, the most comfortable hero from Karol, gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely looking forward to what's going to be coming up next on the Dev-astation Challenge. Look forward to catching you guys next time.